Members of the public.
From whom? Well, they should use a letter opener.
I'm going to call the Medical Board of California Executive Committee meeting. Good afternoon. I want to ask all of us to please turn our cell phones to silent and make sure they're off the table so we can avoid unnecessary feedback. Noise. You may notice committee members accessing their laptops during the meeting. They are using their laptops solely to access committee meeting materials that are in electronic format. This is an official business meeting of the Medical Board of California Executive Committee, and as such, disruptions of our business will not be tolerated. We have designated time on the agenda for public comment and ask for public comment on each agenda item. I ask that you be respectful of the need to conduct the committee's business. Should anyone disrupt the meeting, I will ask the person to conduct himself or herself in a manner that permits the committee to transact its business. This meeting will be available via teleconference. Individuals listening to the meeting will have an opportunity to provide public comment and will be assisted by a moderator who will be facilitating the teleconferencing process. For those members of the public participating via teleconference, please wait until the moderator has introduced you before making your comments. Please ensure that if you are watching the committee's webcast, that you turn down your speakers when you address the phone via teleconference. To request to make a comment during public comment period, please press *1. You will hear a tone indicating you are in the queue for comment. If you change your mind and do not want to make comment, please press the # sign. Assistance is available throughout the teleconference meeting. To request a specialist, please press *0. Each person will be limited to 3 minutes per agenda item. However, during agenda item 2, public comments on items not on the agenda, the committee has limited the public comment period for individuals on the teleconference to 20 minutes. In addition, public comment from individuals here at the meeting will also be limited to 20 minutes. Therefore, after 20 minutes, no further comments will be accepted. This is so that the committee can ensure that it gets to all its business. During public comment on any other agenda item, 10 minutes will be allowed for comments from individuals on the teleconference line and those in the audience. After 10 minutes, no further comments will be accepted. C. Vang, hello, hi, will be assisting me with receiving the public comments via teleconference during this meeting. The committee welcomes public comment on any item on the agenda, and it is the committee's intent to ask for public comment prior to the committee taking action on any agenda item. If for some reason I forget to ask for public comment on an agenda item and you wish to speak on that item, please raise your hand and you will be recognized. I would also like to remind all speakers to complete a presenter slip so that I can call you by name at the appropriate time and that the record of this meeting is full and complete. Please give the speaker slips to Ms. Toof. Lisa Toof, can you identify yourself? Hello, good afternoon. I will do my best to call upon everyone who has supplied a slip for the agenda item and recognize those who wish to make a last-minute comment. But we ask you to fill out a speaker slip after your comments so we have it for the record. I want to remind all speakers to please stay on topic and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Thank you. I would like to call this meeting to order and ask Ms. Toof to please call the roll.
Dr. Bishop?
Here.
Dr. Gonadev?
Here.
Dr. Levine?
Here.
Dr. Lewis?
Present.
Ms. Pines? Ms. Yaroslavsky?
Present.
Mr. Serrano-Sewell?
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Quorum is present. Moving to agenda item 2, public comments on items not on the agenda. I have no speaker slips. Mr. Vang, are there any comments on the phone?
There are no comments on the phone lines.
Okay, thank you. If not, let's continue to our next agenda item 3, approval of minutes from the May 1, 2014 Executive Committee meeting.
I move to approve.
A motion by Dr. Lewis to approve, second by Ms. Yaroslawski.
Yes.
Any discussion, members? Seeing none, all those, are there any comments from the public? Seeing no comments from the public. Any on the phone?
There are no comments.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, we will move to item agenda 4, which is a discussion on the compendium of policies for the board. Ms. Kirkmeyer? Oh, yeah. Before our executive director, Ms. Simone, speaks, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. And that is, at our last meeting, it was recommended that the board put together a compendium of policies that could be used by staff as they review initial legislation and also to assist as legislation is amended during the legislative process. In some instances, these amendments may be made prior to a board meeting, and staff will have to testify on a bill prior to the meeting, to one of our meetings. In discussing this issue with Ms. Kirkmeyer and Ms. Simones, it has been determined that in addition to this compendium bills that have a significant impact on the board business, I will be speaking with Ms. Kirkmeyer to determine if there needs to be an interim executive committee meeting so that we can take position on a bill prior to a legislative hearing. Of course, if we do that, a 10-day notice would be provided and a teleconference executive committee would be held. However, on some bills, it is thought that a compendium of policies would give staff assistance in providing feedback on bills that come up prior to board meetings. Staff has put this compendium together based upon input from members and meetings with the board and also discussions internally. Everyone has read the document, so Ms. Simones, could you take us through the 3 specific policies that are listed in this document? Our discussion today will be to provide any input into this document, and if the language is agreed upon at this meeting, the items can be taken to the full board later on today. Otherwise, we can further discuss any amendments that need to happen and continue it to the next executive committee meeting. And lastly, I view these compendium of policies as a work in progress. So the colleagues don't feel the need to take action right now. I think these policy statements are important and will provide the guidance to legislators, to ourselves, and express to the public that we take these matters very seriously and wish to go on record. So why don't we discuss what we have before us? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, as the chair said, we have 3 policy areas that staff is recommending for that the board possibly adopt. One is more complex, and that has to do with scope of practice, and then 2 are more straightforward. So I'll just go in the order that they're listed unless the members would like me to do something differently. So the first one is related to scope of practice. So as the board, many members know that the board has taken positions on the past that bills that impact scope of practice for healthcare practitioners. These bills can be difficult to weigh the scope expansion versus the need to ensure consumer protection. However, in the past, the board has both supported and opposed bills that would expand the scope of practice. And a recent example that probably all the members here remember is the Senator Hernandez authored 3 bills that all proposed a scope expansion. So SB 493 was a bill that would have proposed a scope expansion. I won't go over the whole thing. You guys probably remember it, for pharmacists. And in that one, the board believed that it was a scope expansion that would still ensure consumer protection, and we actually ended up supporting SB 493, and that passed and was signed into law. However, there was 2 other bills, SB 491 and 492, which were significant expansions of scope for nurse practitioners and for optometrists, and the board did oppose those because they did feel that they would they had the potential to harm consumers. And so those are some examples of where the board has both supported and opposed scope expansions. So if you go to page 4-2 is where the policy and principles start. So it would depend on the particular language in each bill, but board staff believes that the following policy statement could be adopted by the board due to the broadness of the policy for bills that propose scope of practice expansions. Number 1 is DCA, the board and other healthcare boards at the DCA are duty-bound, first and foremost, to protect and serve California consumers. Number 2, protecting and serving healthcare consumers requires that DCA and its member healthcare boards assure, as best as practicable, that healthcare consumers are evaluated and managed by California licensees practicing within their scope of practice as defined by law or regulation. B, evaluated and managed by licensees who are in compliance with all applicable federal, state, and local laws and regulations. C, evaluated and managed by competent licensees practicing within community standards of care. And D, entitled to be evaluated and managed in accordance with the highest standard of care applicable to any of the licensed or certified practitioners. 3, the board holds that all California consumers should know the background, training, education, certification, and history of disciplinary actions of any healthcare provider they may consider seeing. And 4, the board recommends that any legislatively proposed expansion of scope of practice include criteria to be met regarding education, training, certification, and continued oversight of any practitioner who obtains expanded scope. First and foremost, consumers must be protected, and any proposed scope expansion must assure adequate mechanisms and oversight to reduce patient risk of harm. Care provided to patients in California should be of the same quality regardless of who is providing the care. So I don't know if we want to take a moment to discuss that or if I should go through all 3.
Why don't we stop with scope of practice? And given the complexity of the issue, if the committee is okay, we can have a committee discussion first that may inform a motion. So are there comments from, I'll look to my left, right. Dr. Levine?
Just one comment, and I want to commend you on the write-up of this whole section. I think it was extremely well done and very thorough. In the paragraph, the last paragraph, I would, this is kind of an editing amendment, but I think it's also content. Between training and certification, I would put proctoring in there.
Dr. Levine, can you give us where you're at again exactly?
End of the section, number 4. The board recommends that any legislatively proposed expansion of scope include criteria to be met, including education, training, certification, and continuing oversight. And my suggestion is to add proctoring between training and certification. In particular, when there's a proposal to expand scope involving procedures or surgical procedures in particular, observation prior to certification is really important.
Thank you. Any additional comments to my left? You don't, I can come back, but I was just starting here. To my right, Dr. Bishop, Barbara?
I think it's absolutely excellent. My only concern, and I don't know that it should be a concern, is that under policy and procedures that the Department of Consumer Affairs is listed out, is called out. I mean, it's okay for us to make rules and regs for them?
It's more of a working with them during this process.
Okay, as long as that's okay. I mean, I think it's absolutely wonderful.
I also want to recognize Dr. Krause's contributions to this process. He was extremely helpful in guiding the internal discussions that we had in the production and presentation of this document. It could not have done without him, so we thank you. I see no further comments. Is there a motion? And then I'll take comment.
I'll move to present this to the full board.
There's been a motion and a second. Before we vote, are there comments from the public? Yes. Hey, just please state your name. That's okay.
Clarify the motion real quick.
Yeah.
I just need to make sure that we clarify the motion real quick. Is the motion as to just this one or to the entire?
Just this one.
To scope of practice, and also, thank you, to include Dr. Levine's
with the addition,
suggestion with the proctoring.
Absolutely, sorry, with absolutely.
Thank you. That is the motion.
This actually is We have no issue with any of the policy statements themselves. CMA actually does a policy compendium as well as does the American Medical Association. It's a pretty common practice for a lot of the medical associations. The only thing I would suggest is, as you're thinking about doing a compendium, putting them on some kind of regular, we have a sunset review that we do on a particular calendar. It's a good way to sort of check. You might want to do an annual review, as most of these things are likely to apply for a while, but sometimes things happen where, you might want to be more specific or laws have changed. So as you put this forward to the board, you might want to suggest having some kind of mechanism to do that as well, so that it's always on your radar. That's it. Thank you.
Would you state your name? Or maybe you did. Did I miss
Yvonne
it?
Chung, California Medical Association.
Thank you. That is a great suggestion. Are there additional comment from members present? Public members? Any comments from the phone?
There are no comments. Thank you.
There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor? Dr. Krause, were you going to say something?
No, I was going to say something. Do we need to add to be reviewed every 6 months or annually to the motion or not?
I don't think that's necessary.
No? Okay.
LS2.
Yeah. Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Wonderful. Next
Okay.
policy.
Moving on to continuing medical education. For some background, there are many bills that initially proposed requiring mandatory CME. Due to the board's history in opposing these bills, the chief of legislation, me, always advises legislative offices that board would likely oppose mandatory CME. And many times you'll see those bills change to be something different, like encourages or something that's not a mandate. But our policy statement recommendation is the board opposes the concept of mandated CME topics. The board believes that each licensed physician should decide which type of continuing education is most appropriate for their particular practice. So if I had this behind me, then I could say the board has a policy on this issue.
I move to support the policy statement recommendation as stated.
Is there a second? Second. There's a second. Board discussion? Seeing no... Yes, Doctor.
It's a great idea because it's the only CME we mandate is where all the troubles are. That's the pain management. So it doesn't really do any benefit to the consumers, just adds additional burden and gets these pharmaceutical companies which sell drug to get involved in trying to get that CME.
Are there additional comments from the committee members? If not,
So we just all need to remember the reason why we do this is because there's always the disease of the month. And in all due fairness to the medical practitioners, the idea of having a very valid reason for having to take additional CME is really there. But the idea is, how do you decide which one is more important than the next one? And it's been a dilemma that we're not going to be able to fix. So therefore, we're not going to start it.
okay, thank you. Is there any public comment from those in the audience? Just please state your name.
I will make a slip. Excuse
you.
me, Karen Ehrlich, licensed midwife.
Bless you.
Oh, dear. I would, as well as the pain management that Dr. Gnanadev just mentioned, based on what we heard this morning from the African-American representatives, it would seem to me that something about cultural competency, which would span all specialties, could be required. It's already required.
already in there.
It's already in
Thank
there.
you.
Yeah, we have to.
Thank you for raising that. Are there additional comment from those in the audience? Seeing none, any comment from the phone?
There are no comments. Thank you.
Thank you. There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. No abstentions, I assume. Next, policy discussion.
Okay, moving on to funding for physician education. For some background, the board has routinely supported bills that provide additional funding for the practice of medicine. This includes bills that improve or provide more funding for loan programs, provide more funding for medical schools, and provide funding for additional residency positions. When these types of bills are introduced, I do advise the author's offices that board will likely be in support, but our policy statement recommendation is the board supports additional funding for physician education, including funding for additional residency positions, funding for medical schools in California, and funding for loan programs, including the Stephen M. Thompson Loan Repayment Program. That would be the policy recommendation that we're suggesting.
Move to approve. Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Discussion from the committee.
Are we in a position to ever suggest, I mean, aren't the residency programs, a number of those, isn't that a federal decision?
Some bills will provide additional funding, so we don't have to wait for that.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not so sure why we're bothering with this, that's all. I'm not sure.
There have been bills in the past that would fund additional residency positions not using federal funding, and we've supported those. It doesn't happen, they don't pass very often.
I thought it was
but-
interesting of all the policy statements to come up with that this was a policy statement that you felt was important. That was all.
So the
Dr. Levine, and then I'll go to
federal
Dr. Bishop.
funding of residency slots comes from the Medicare
Right.
pot. And that number was frozen in 1997, I believe, Balanced Budget Act. Subsequent to that, many new residency positions have been created from different sources of funding. I think this is an appropriate policy statement for the medical board. There are, you know, I think many of the bills that are introduced to increase funding come from the position of don't tax me, don't tax thee, tax the man behind the tree.
Yeah.
You know, the drug companies, the insurance companies, what's his name, Mark Zuckerberg. Somebody should put more funding in, and the truth is most of those have a difficult time moving forward because of whoever it is that's being volunteered to provide additional funding. But from a medical board perspective, I think this policy makes complete sense.
Thank you. Dr. Bishop?
I have a slightly related concern, and this is based on, although I strongly support funding for additional medical education, I'm just mindful of the recent cures legislation where the doctors bore the burden, which I felt was inequitable in funding that. And I'm very concerned by putting something like this out there because I suspect the we that we're going to tax will be the doctors if we're not careful. And I think, although physicians certainly bear a burden and are active participants in this, I'm always concerned with just giving a carte blanche to anybody.
Doctor?
I actually understand Dr. Bishop's concern, but tell you, I mean, all of you know already, California is in pretty bad shape when it comes to access to care. If you look at Inland Empire, alone needs about 3,000 more doctors. And just to give you some numbers, New York State with a population half as much as California has 13 MD schools. California, twice the population, has 9 MD schools. We got some real deep troubles. We need to find funding other places, not just the physician side, both for residencies and medical schools. And residencies, even though it was frozen, there is a loophole in that frozen area. That is, if a hospital never had residency before, you can start and you will have 5 years to get capped out. So there are places we can, with the help of state and other sources of funding, we can give them the preliminary funding, and then the CMS will take over and fund them. So there are ways to do it. I think we should do whatever it takes to get it done.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the audience? Seeing none, are there any comments on the phone?
There are no phone comments.
Thank you. There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Okay, one opposition. Any abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move to agenda item 5, discussion and consideration of committees, task forces, and subcommittees. Both I and Ms. Kirkmeyer will give this report. In the board's strategic plan, every other October, the board should review the listings of committees to determine the necessity of the committees, its roles, and whether the committee needs to continue or can be retired. In August, I met with Ms. Kirkmeyer to discuss the board's committees. I want to thank Ms. Kirkmeyer for coming out to San Francisco so we could have that about 3.5-hour discussion, so thank you. The recommendations from this meeting are listed on pages Exec 5.1 to Exec 5-5 on pages exec 5-6 to exec 5-16. There is a document that identifies the current committees with their roles, membership, and charge, their issues. The main goal of reviewing the board's committees is to find efficiencies, assist with time commitments for the members, and increase output from the committees. As you can see, it is recommended that the board keep enforcement, licensing, education and wellness, and the executive committees as standing committees and continue with them for the next 2 years. For the executive committee members, it is recommended that it be made of the board officers, the president, vice president, and secretary, the immediate past president, Dr. Levine, and the chairs of the enforcement, licensing, and education and wellness committees. That would put us at 7, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. There are several of our committees that are required by law, and of course, it is the recommendation to keep those committees. The Special Faculty Permit Review Committee, Midwifery Advisory Council, the Application Review Committee, and the Special Programs Committee. However, it is recommended that the Application Review and Special Programs Committees be combined. The duties and function of those committees are very similar, and there was no requirement to keep them separate, just that we have a committee to discuss applications and special program applications when necessary. It's also those committees don't meet as often, so we can combine those two duties. Thank you. As you can see in the documents in this section, the recommendation is to eliminate the Access to Care, Cultural, and Linguistic Competency Committee and its subcommittee. The committee hasn't met in several years, and there has been no need to have this committee. The role of this committee, which was to find ways to improve access to care and also to hear an update on cultural and linguistic competency in continuing medical education, can be put into the Licensing Committee and the Education and Wellness Committee. The Committee on Physician Supervisory Responsibilities is another committee that has completed its main purpose. However, this committee has brought up a few other issues. These issues, though, it is our belief, could be placed in either the Enforcement or the Licensing Committee as appropriate. If additional discussion is needed on an issue, it is better done at an interested parties meeting rather from within this committee. This issue can be brought back to the appropriate standing committee, licensing or enforcement, for the appropriate action before going to the full board. Lastly, it is recommended that the board eliminate the subcommittees and task forces with the exception of the prescribing task force, which has continued responsibilities pertaining to prescribing practices. These two member committees allow staff to work with the committee and to hold interested party meetings. The information is then brought to the full board for action. Therefore, it is recommended that it continue. And I want to, before we have a discussion, just wanted to re-emphasize a couple of points that Kimberly and I discussed. One is we want to increase the output from the committees. We realize that our times are valuable. We're busy with other engagements. And my thinking was to expand the scope of authority with each of the committees that would, if approved, would go on for the next 2 years. Wasn't to limit anything or discussion, rather to give those committees and their chairs the authority to go about their business, have the necessary meetings, hearings, interested party meetings, and then come back to the full board with a report and possible action. So you see the work before you. Before we could take a motion, Kimberly, would you like to make some comments?
I just wanted to make one comment that on page exec 5-2, when I wrote this memo, I inadvertently left off in the recommendation, the membership of the executive committee would be the president, vice president, secretary, immediate past president, and the chairs of the board standing committees. It was just a drafting error, and I apologize for that.
Absolutely. So that committee is now currently comprised of 6, and it would go to 7.
We go to 7, right.
Because I'm adding, well, it is recommended, my thinking is to add the chair of there would be 3 standing committees now. Enforcement, licensing, which we have now, and the 3rd standing committee, which the chair would have a seat on the executive committee, would be the Education and Wellness Committee, which is currently chaired. I've asked Barbara to continue in that capacity.
Yes.
Are there any, is there anything else, Kimberly, to add?
That was it. You
Thank you.
covered everything.
Before we take a motion, are there questions or comments from staff? I mean, from my colleagues? Doctor?
It's a great idea. Just to quote one of my favorite business side gurus, Peter Drucker, one of the ones he mentions is every organization has to look into on and off to really do something called organized abandonment. That is, you have to eliminate certain things. You can't be doing everything forever. And so we are just combining function into something. That's how what we do.
Absolutely. Should the need ever arise on a special subject matter issue, I would confer with all of you, and we could assemble a task force. But I think this will serve the board well. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any comments from the public? Those present? Any comment from the phone?
There are no comments from the phone.
Seeing none, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Update on the strategic plan? Kimberly? Item 6.
I would like to ask each of you to turn to EXEC, exec 6-1 to 6-21. And on these pages, you will find an update on the board's new strategic plan. As you can see, we have color-coded the document as well as have provided a section where the status of the objective is listed, including any action that has been taken. With the new strategic plan, several items identify something that has to happen each quarter or monthly. In the past, we may have had like certain dates that things needed to be done, but in this one, we've really identified those items that have to be done on a quarterly and monthly basis in some avenues. So for those, board staff will identify that it has been completed by placing green in the date column at the update, each meeting that an update is given for the past quarter, basically, or the last month that that's been done. If we weren't able to get something done, we will put red in the column. If we are working on something, it will be yellow. The majority of items in red in the pages that are in front of you are really due to the board's inability to run enforcement reports in our BREEZE system. You'll see those ones are red in there. Our ISB staff continues to work by themselves on some reports and with DCA on others to try and get the reports finalized, as you heard me go over earlier today. Others are red because of lack of resources. Several key positions have been vacant, specifically with the absence of a deputy director and a chair of enforcement, which will assist with some of the special projects. Right now, I'm basically having the staff that would assist in these, helping me in those roles that would have been done by those individuals. We will work on these items in the next quarter to ensure we are meeting our goals. I want to make sure that the members like the presentation, since this is the first time we've presented our new plan, so any feedback is really appreciated. And I'm not going to go over each one unless members have specific questions on any of the specific items.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Ms. Yaroslavsky? And then I'll go to my left.
Dr. Levine, I would defer to you.
Oh, Dr. Levine?
So just on exec 615, this is more an observation.
Okay.
Exec which one?
6-15. So it's
on smaller pages next time, too.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
No,
Actually,
it's perfectly
I appreciate
okay.
being able
All
to
right.
read it.
Just maybe put the page numbers on the left instead of the right.
That's a good idea.
Smaller pages would be a problem. On 41C, I would suggest adding the Senate and Assembly Health Committees. Many of the issues that come before us in legislation actually either originate in or come to the health committees. And so I think it's important for the members of those committees to understand the board and its functioning.
Check. You don't go to Senate Health right now when they come as new members?
To the new members and occasionally, but usually they just call me when it goes.
Okay. So we'll put that down when we go through and do our rounds.
It's a suggestion. And under 42B, in reading through the individual elements in the far right, it seems to me there may be a more efficient way to reach larger stakeholder audiences. Going hospital by hospital is a pretty inefficient use of our poor public information officer and, to some extent, the board's time, because I think it would be helpful for board members to be involved in these presentations. And all of the associations, all of the stakeholder communities have associations that meet. California Primary Care Association, the California Hospital Association, CMA, CAPG, where informational, breakout sessions or informational plenaries could actually carry the message of the board to much larger audiences than, no problem responding to requests, but in terms of thinking going forward, in terms of a strategy, I'd love to see the associations included, and also trying to match board members, putting the face of the board members in these presentations. Thank you.
Those are great suggestions.
Yeah.
We will capture that. Thank you.
So are you looking to do this as a whole thing, or are we going to go from the beginning through it?
Well,
No, does not go.
this is just an update, I believe.
Yeah, just
I just wanted to ask about a missing part that I was worried was missing, and maybe it was my mistake, and I remember.
Please.
And that was in the licensing and the review of approved schools, foreign schools, and the re-review of them on a regular basis, as well as the review of new schools that were looking to be reviewed.
Which number, which goal are you looking at? I'm
So
sorry.
at 1.1, define
Okay.
what is necessary to, oh, no, then, wait, not the, wait. So it's not there. It's not there. It's not on the goals, so I apologize.
Okay. But that is something that we work to, Kurt does an update, Mr. Warden does an update at everyone on the status of where we are on the schools. It may not be, and I don't think it is actually in our strategic plan.
I'd not read the goals, I'd read by who was doing what.
Okay.
So my apologies.
But that is something, just Ms. Yarosowski, just so you know, that is something we have to get back to, is going out to the schools again.
Or at least developing a schedule to do
Right,
that,
right.
more so than going out.
Are there additional comments or questions from the committee members? Seeing none, is there any public comment from those in the audience? Any comment from the telephone?
No questions in queue.
Ms. Kirk, oh, nothing? Okay. Thank you for that update. We will now move to agenda item 7, future agenda items for the executive committee. Do any members have any future agenda items for our next meeting?
How are we on your budget issues?
Good
We
question.
haven't had budget issues at all for a while. Ms. Kirkmeyer, are you okay with budget?
Yes, that's actually in my executive report, if you want to ask questions this
I didn't know if you
afternoon.
needed something for, if within the executive committee, there was like a vehicle by which quarterly we did certain things and quarterly we did
Okay.
other things instead of doing, that might be also of benefit. And this is
Okay.
like coming to the end of the, or starting, prior to the next
Next
fiscal
fiscal
year, that might be an issue. But I'm not suggesting that it's necessary.
All right.
Just that maybe that we have some.
Your point is well taken. Are there additional suggestions? Is there any public comment from those in the audience on future agenda items? None? Are there any comments from those on the phone on future agenda items?
No comments.
Okay, thank you. We will now move to agenda item 8, the annual evaluation of the executive director, and the committee will be going into closed session.